Welcome to the 12 Days of Zentangle and Project Pack number 22. This is day 1. My name is Rick.
Hi, I'm Maria.
And we are spiraling into or out of or onto writing spirals here.
Well, spiraling is usually a sort of a negative thing, but in this case, it's exuberance and wonderfulness.
And we're just like bouncing off of all of the inspirations that we see of spirals in nature. And in this tile, I'm going to use everything. Everything in this lovely pack. And we're going to use this tile, which you will find, and you will find it absolutely wonderful. And to appreciate it, I love to just appreciate the texture and really zone in and focus in on the materials and the tools. And if you haven't listened to our introductory video, please do, because it tells the whole backstory of what we're doing here.
Yeah, you need to hear that first. Yeah.
And you get to hear all of us having a good time. And at this point, I am using the 08 black, and I'm restating some of these spiral lines. So with the 08 black, and this is a really interesting exercise to follow something, whether you're auraing it or restating it. It's a whole different experience, right? Than doing the line initially.
So he's kind of going around the flux shapes, Rick's flux shapes, and making a curvy zigzag line.
Right, so we've got this this sine wave going, undulating back and forth. And if you make a little that could have been more even or something, just wait till the whole thing is done and you realize all those little whatevers just disappear into the whole structure.
So Rick has gone to his brown 05 pen, and he's doing the same thing. He's kind of going back and forth with a zigzaggy motion.
And you can see it's that other side of those flux paisley-like shapes, which are actually part of a spiral in and of themselves, because you could imagine that if you were to put two of them together side by side, you'd have that, traditional yin-yang symbol, and which is like a spiraling of itself.
So I'm not catching on to that.
I'll show you later.
Okay. All right.
So in the inside of the those flux shapes, I'm putting an orb, again in the brown ink. And so we're building off this really neat background spiraling string to pull out some of the, or to emphasize some of the structure that's within it. And now I'm using this, light teal color?
Yeah, teal turquoise. It's beautiful.
And I just tried, make sure it's flowing nice on the back. And I'm creating this little window here to make like a little highlight. So I think I learned this from Maria, make a little bit of a window and then fill in around it. And I'm doing that both on the orbs and on the flux of the brown. I'm alternating. So you just watch and play along. And remember, you can, at any point, you figured this out, but you can pause these because we jump ahead a lot. And we also are putting down a lot of ink in this series. So we thought, oh, we're going to do like this short series, and we kept doing more and more and more. So this is our gift to you, and we just made all of this. So the point of that is give yourself time to, at your leisure, do this, and don't feel any pressure to keep up.
I like the idea of watching what Rick does all the way down the line, and then stopping the video, and then you can see it in front of you, and then kind of emulating.
So you see, I skipped every other one. So there's a nice little contrast with these colors that this really like this palette that Molly put together.
Pretty, huh? It's kind of Southwestern.
Yeah. So once we've got those down, I'm going to go back with my brown. And again, I'm going to define some of the spaces by going over the string with the brown 05. And then I'm going to take the inspiration of those flux shapes and fill it with flux. And this is a really fun time for you to use the structure of these leaf-like shapes to put them in different places. So you understand like the basic shape that you're doing, and that's fairly straightforward and structured, but then you get to put them wherever you feel like at the moment.
So the beauty of flux is that you put down your shapes first, those teardrop shapes or leaf shapes, like Rick said, and then it doesn't matter what the background looks like. It can fill very comfortably with these orbs that kind of nestle in there. It's such a beautiful tangle, and we don't do it that often. And this is a nice exercise to get to be reacquainted with flux.
So whatever size orb you want to put in there, whatever fits, you put the biggest ones in first, and then I'm just going around and coloring in what we call the interstices there. And don't get too dizzy there. I keep turning this around.
It's what you usually do because you're looking at it and analyzing the structure. Because we sort of design on the fly here when we're teaching you.
And that whole idea of turning your tile, it gives you a different perspective as you turn it. If it was locked in an easel and it never turned, you'd only see it from one perspective. And you'll get different ideas and inspirations. So you may be noticing a quote-unquote pattern here because I'm keying the brown sections off of the brown background or the brown outline that I did on those first like sine waves. And you can use Hollabaugh technique with these leaves, or you can just set them side by side. So that's another like creative little touch you can decide to employ, and they can overlap, or you might decide, I'm just going to have them side by side like little puzzle pieces. So we're presenting both options.
When I see this shape in like manuscripts, in old manuscripts, they were ahead of the game because this shape can fill anything comfortably and elegantly. I go to like poke leaf often because it's just so easy to lose yourself in the drawing.
And you get to put these in as big as you want them, as small as you want them, and it is a very natural and organic tangle. And you can see that these are happening within the structure of these spiraling shapes. And that is something that, we're playing with this whole concept of spiral because it's so part of it's energized, like springs are like a built-in spiral, and they have their inherent energy within them. Or you'll see whether it's looking at, images in the sky of giant spirals or little spirals, like if you look at Bijou's shell of a little snail shell, it has a similar shaped spiral. And then I'm putting in these, like, what would you call, like the center spine of the leaf.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm starting, like I'm moving, and I have like a lighterness to the tip of it. So it comes in and then it goes a little bit more heavy. So particularly with these 05s and 08s, you can really adjust the pressure.
You're referring to the pens.
The pens, right,
Yeah.
right. Thanks. So here, just going in and finding the largest orb that I can, putting it in those spaces. And if you had other pens, you might decide, I'm going to use, like an 01 and make even tinier little orbs. But I very reluctantly held myself to the tools in the project pack.
Yeah. Sometimes the elegance of limits forces you to do things that you wouldn't ordinarily do and try something new. So take that to heart.
Yeah. And like all of our project packs, you can use any materials. You can use the principles that we're working with here and find whatever materials, whatever papers, whatever marking devices you have, and look at that almost as like a creative challenge. Like, okay, I don't have these, but I don't have the ones in the project pack, but I have these materials, and how can I use them? And really take that as inspiration instead of limitation.
Yeah, so if you have just a blank tile, and just throw this tangle on there and see where it takes you. It's a great exercise in almost like one of Molly's the silent meditations.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And is it a leaf? Is it one of those balloons, like a balloon filled with water, and you're holding it at the end, or it could.
Well, I like the Paisley analysis.
Yeah.
Analogy.
Yeah. And just really enjoying the process. We say that over and over again. You can really enjoy the end result, and you can really enjoy getting there. So take your time. This is not a race. This is not a rush. Just really give yourself that opportunity to appreciate the joy of putting this ink on this paper like that.
So you can see what's happening here is he's skipping a stripe.
Right.
So within the pattern, there's going to be a pattern.
And really trying to, or part of my intention, like I had an intention when I came in to doing this, and that was to create some contrast by alternating the tools or the colors of the tools in the project pack. So playing off of that spiral string, and then, understanding the benefit of contrast and how that pleases the eye.
So you can see now what's missing. He's going to add this piece to complete the thought process, right?
And you'll see how I'm holding the tile. As you put down a lot of ink in like a solid area, it's easy it doesn't dry as fast, and as it can get on your finger, then it gets someplace you might not have wanted it. So there we have our brown put in alternating sections. And then as the contrast, we'll go with the 08 black. And then we're going to do something in those intervening spaces that very conveniently you'll see come off of the black side of that undulation.
So you'll want to just watch here for a minute to see where he's going.
And this is, Maria and I were talking about this before we started, and it's like, is it Shattuck? Is it crescent moon? Is it both, And
it's almost a backwards crescent moon.
Right. It's like a reverse aura coming down. And a lot of times Shattuck will be just those lines all the way down. But in this case, I wanted a little bit of,
drama.
Yes, drama. That's the word I was looking for. So we'll make that last little bit solid ink.
So you can see that it's sort of crescent moon.
Yeah.
Or crescent moonish.
And the technique I have is I take off with that arc at the beginning, right up to the edge, and then I land on the other side almost at 90 degrees. And that's sort of the little mechanism that I have in my mind when I'm doing this. And if you look up Shattuck on the app, you'll see that these lines can be straight. They can be obviously curvy like this.
The first time I saw this tangle, so this was a tangle that existed, and we saw it on a Japanese kimono. It was so beautiful. And I then afterwards would see the pattern often in Japanese art.
Right.
So some tangles are created and some are respectfully reproduced.
Or we take that inspiration. And it's funny too, because you'll see something and you'll do it, and then it seems like all of a sudden you see it everywhere. Like if you buy a car if you're driving a car that's whatever color, all of a sudden you see all these other cars the same color. So I'm just going to do that in all of those remaining sections.
We called it Shattuck to do a shout out to Molly. That's her middle name. It was her great-grandmother's name.
And just like flux, you can work this into tiny, tiny areas. And even though it's not absolutely perfect, or whatever that means, into the small spaces, the eye will just figure out, well, that's the way it's going, and it fills in all the missing details. So in the same way that we did the brown on both sides, we're going to do the Shattuck. And here there's just one little one, so it really is like reverse crescent moon.
When you see Rick go back and forth, he's thinking. I can hear his brain going, what?
Well, I'm really thinking about what's the best and most comfortable way to hold my pen. So it's like arcing the way the natural rotation of your wrist would go, where it pivots on the heel of your hand.
That's an important thing, the arc of your hand, and taking advantage of that to make a nice smooth line.
And I'm going back over those little paisleys or flux shapes with the brown pen over the, what is that color?
It's like a pale peachy color, right?
Right. So over that, and then over the and then over the teal, I'm using the black. And sometimes I would put a little dot at the end of those inner lines, but isn't that coming good?
It looks great. Looks great. It's fun.
And now it's frosting time.
Yeah, shading.
And shading Shattuck is...
Say that 10 times fast.
Right? is one of the most fun and easily followed techniques. So the first part of shading is I lay down a good amount of graphite where I want it to be. It's sort of like, it really is like frosting a cake. You just put a big dollop on there, and then you come back in and smooth it out with the tortillon.
Pushed it around. I like to start with quite a bit too. I'm not one to shade lightly. I don't
or
shred
to
lightly.
do anything lightly.
I don't do anything lightly. Yeah.
And you may want to. I know Molly will go back and forth with the tortillon, and there's something to be said for that because you can see the direction that it's going. And in this case, I put all of the graphite down, and then I'm coming back with the tortillon.
So what he's doing with the tortillon, for those of you who are new to this, he's pulling it away from the edge and going towards the middle of the tangle. And you don't want to go all the way. You want to leave white space in the middle for the highlight. This is the big part. If you shade everything, then nothing is shaded.
Right. But look at you get that sense of roundedness and over and under, and this is so much fun to do. So, it's fun to watch. A lot of times Maria and I like looking at this, doing the voiceover, and we forget to talk. It's like, oh, this is really cool. Right? So look at the difference of that. And it's actually sort of cool with the contrast, of shaded and not shaded. There's something to be said about just stopping there, but you get to decide.
So with the brown chalk pencil, Rick is using it almost like a graphite pencil to add shading to these peachy colored shapes. Just for something different.
And then a little bit opposite the
low light, yeah.
That little window I left there.
Brown.
And B is for brown. And
he's a little more organized than I am.
Actually, somebody else had done that, so I just used it. But the idea is that, eventually all tortillons become black tortillons. But if you keep them separate a little bit, then you get to be a bit more deliberate on keeping the colors there.
My tendency is to use the same one for everything, and it gives it a rich combination of the brown and black together. And I just kind of go with whatever's in my hand at the time.
It's like the dirty water and mixing your brush.
Yeah, I love working with dirty water.
Okay. So we're really getting a sense of movement there. I think, it's like spinning around. And that same principle, I'm now using the dark brown chalk and going into all of the roots of the flux. So it gives that sense that it's like coming out of the background.
Right.
And those guys are sort of spinning as well. And then on the other side, I'm using the ochre chalk pencil and just laying down some dollops on the ends of those, the larger ends of those shapes. And then coming back in with the tortillon, and I'm just going to move around the lighter shapes and then bring it in with the darker shapes, and just like Maria said, pretty soon they're all
black.
They were all black. But in this case, you get a bit more complex of a color. And I'm also using what is on the tortillon to touch on some of the orbs now and then. And just like moving the tile under the pen, I move the tile while I'm shading or using the tortillon. So whatever is comfortable for your hand. And sometimes it's nice to be able to see where the tortillon is pointing. So just moving those together. And again, taking your time to enjoy this process. And taking the inspiration that this might give you to do something that's different from what's being done. And we say that a lot, like this is not for us to get you to make a duplicate. We could do that on the copier. This is to get you to be inspired by this to do something that only you can do. And there's a bit of a difference there. Yep, always. Oops, forgot to fill that in.
So you can see the richness of the colors in contrast with the black and white is kind of an interesting pattern, right? And don't worry, you're always going to find a place where you forgot to soften it up or go back later and do it.
And this is really quite fractal because the whole string, the overall string, is very similar to one of those flux shapes. And then it's internal and you get it.
Now he's going in and doing that magic thing right at the end, adding the white highlight where there's no shading. And you don't want to put the white highlight anywhere near graphite because it becomes gray. So you don't get as pure a highlight as you might like. It sort of brings it out a little bit.
So I'm just picking up some of the color and putting it in different places, doing like a little low light there.
And don't forget, we add shading and highlights not according to where the light is most of the time, but according to the pattern.
Right.
So you do it the same way on the pattern.
And put in your chop. Really, appreciate what you've done, enjoying this opportunity. Please share these online. The hashtag will be at the end, and on the app. We love, love, love seeing the directions that you take this and where you go with it.
Beautiful. Good job, Ricky.
Thank you. And then sign it, date it, and
scrawl something illegible on the back. Not that
like that?
Yeah.
And welcome to Project Pack 22, and we will see you tomorrow. Thanks again.
See you later.
Bye now.
Bye.